Hello.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Aradhana Tewari from Be the Change by Aradhana, founder of Be the Change page, Access Consciousness Certified Facilitator, empowering and a leadership coach. So, welcome to this space today. And this is a beautiful space which I just love to be in. So, Be the Change page is a page which invites you with a question every morning to introspect yourself and your knowing and really invites you to have the courage to follow your heart. So, this talk show is every Sunday, and I invite everybody from different facets of life who had the courage to follow what they knew and the gift that they had, and they're sharing that in the world with on different platforms. And for me, there are celebrities because somebody who really has a courage in spite of going beyond everybody, negating them and not acknowledging them and not validating them. They validated themselves and showed up in the world as who they be. So I really feel honored, and every time I invite a guest, they just melt my world. So I always thought that if it's melting my world, I'm sure in the world that it's melting somebody else's world too. So what contribution can these talk shows can be to each other? If any of you is doing so, please get in touch with us to be on this talk show. I would be happy to invite you here. And today I have a very, very dear friend of me, Anthony Mattis. Anthony has been using the tools of access consciousness for the past 8 years, which empowered him to change his life altogether. When he came to Access, he had studied almost every modality from Christian coaching to spiritual bird calls to bring his life together as he had lost his wife of 10 years um, and was raising three kids all by himself. Today, he's a doctor of chiropractic, Access Consciousness Certified Facilitator, 3-day body facilitator, body class facilitator, and talk to entities facilitator who travels the world empowering people, inviting them on a journey of a greater possibility and a greater world. So it's an honor to invite Anthony. Can I have you online, please? Hello, welcome to the space, and thank you for saying yes to this.
Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, as I was saying, Anthony, it's always a pleasure to have everybody of you. For me, you all are celebrities who had the courage to follow your knowing that there is something different possible and
Mhm.
you never gave up. And in
Yeah.
spite of so much coming in your life, going through so many depressions and anxieties, you still never gave up. I would love to go there, but I would first like to start from your journey as a child, who you were, where you coming from, and what all have you seen in life, and what all
Yeah.
you.
Well, thank you. That was a lovely invitation. I was born in Queens, New York. My mother and grandmother were Italian refugees, and they came from Italy when my mother was about 5 or 6 years old. And so, I never met my biological father. He left when I was about 1 month old. And so we lived in a very small apartment in Brooklyn, New York, with my mother, my grandmother, and my two uncles. And life for me, at least back then, it was very stressful. My mother was very young. My grandmother was my primary caretaker, and when I was about 5 years old, I had my first traumatic experience because she died. She passed away. My grandmother was more like my mother, and so there was just always trauma and drama going on. And so and I remember my childhood vividly. I remember being in the baby crib when I was probably 1 or 2 years old, and I remember feeling like I was in a prison, like trapped. And I always had this awareness, even as a child, that, it's like, who am I? What happens when you die? So all those types of things. And then about a year later, my mother met my dad, who actually raised me. And he came from actually an affluent family. He worked on Wall Street, and he showed me a greater possibility. Now, he and my mother were only married for a few years, but he moved my mother and I to a really beautiful area in New Jersey, about 25 minutes outside New York City. And I had a lovely childhood. But what was interesting, even though he came along and he showed me different possibilities with regards to money, um, I still sort of like inherited my mother's points of view about struggling for money. And so it was something that I had to fight against most of my life. And and then when they would sign me up in school, I wasn't the best student as a child. I had a lot of energy. I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so my only outlet as a child was athletics. I was, fairly good in sports, and that was like the thing that I had going for me. I loved playing sports. That was probably the only space where I felt like I was me. Outside of that, there was just always trauma and drama in the family, and I didn't do well academically. I always felt very lost, and I felt like I was never really present. And it's interesting because now, with working with the access consciousness tools and the X-Men classes, which is a term that they affectionately give people who have been diagnosed with, ADD, ADHD, autism, all that stuff. It's I had an awareness of the information that I was learning, that especially like with regards to history, um, and even like grammar, for example. It's like you're learning these words that were used and derived from like the 13th century. It's like nobody speaks that way anymore, you know what I mean? And so it's like, so I guess I had this awareness that, you know I don't know, especially with history, they only teach you what they want you to learn so they can kind of shape and mold your points of view. And I didn't realize until I got to travel around the world and meet beautiful people like yourself around the world that are interested in consciousness, that are interested in greater possibilities that's beyond what this reality has presented us. And so as I got to see different cultures and meet different people and see that our hearts beat the same, we still have blood that runs through our veins. And the only thing that's different is maybe how we celebrate holidays, or maybe how we worship a god or gods or whatever, but outside of that, we put our pants on one leg at a time, like everybody else. And right. And so it made sense. I'm like, why did I only learn? So I realized that I wasn't as dumb as I thought I was. It
But
was
did you
just,
ever think you were dumb, Anthony, when you were growing up? Did you even felt in you, or did you even felt that you were lost ever when you were a child? Or
okay, it was interesting. It was like I was struggling with two things. I did feel like I was stupid because I did not do well on any of the tests, right? So compared to my peers, I was always failing, but it was because I was disinterested. I didn't care. And I could never figure out why I didn't care until I started taking the X-Men classes. And I know I had an awareness that a lot of what I was learning were lies.
wow.
But that's not a good reason and justification for checking out either, right?
Yeah.
So, and I just wish that I would have had someone saying, you know what, you're right, but if you want to have more choices, you got to get good grade. You know what I mean? It's like, just try to pay attention as best you can. And and then so looking back, but it was like I wasn't dumb, I just wasn't interested. And
Mm.
when I'm not interested, boy, I really can tune something out. And then I also realized that that was a capacity of mine. Because there was so much drama and trauma in my household, I had an ability to tune out all the noise that was going on around me.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was a way of surviving.
Yeah, that's such an information. And I'm sure a lot of kids growing up now also, and a lot of families, people listening here now and later, probably this will be a lot of information for them, that yes, not getting to the wrongness, that it is something that they're tuning out, either from the family or the capacity, because they know something more than that.
Yeah. I mean, they even tested me for hearing because they thought I had a hearing problem, because someone could be speaking right here. And I swear to you, I wouldn't hear a word that they said because I was someplace else.
Wow.
And it was just, it was about a year ago. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a capacity. I was like able to escape the trauma and drama of things. And it was like a way of protecting my nervous system, so to speak.
It,
But so eventually, when it was time for us to choose, university, or to choose a trade or whatever, my father had long left, and he never showed me how to work with my hands in terms of fixing things like a carpenter or an electrician. And my grades weren't good enough to get into university. So I was like, I'm just going to go to a local community college. I'm going to do my best, and then I'm going to transfer to a 4 year university. Because one thing that I've always known is that I wanted to help people. Even as a boy, I knew that I would be speaking in front of large groups of people.
Wow.
I knew I wanted to help people to become more of who they are. And I had no clue of how I was going to go about doing that. So I assumed you have to go to university for something like that, right? It's, I was like, oh, maybe I just need to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or something. And I'll never forget. My mom's like, "Why are you trying to go to school? You were never good in school. Why don't you just go drive a truck?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want to go drive a truck. I want to like help people, and I think I need to go to university for that because that was the point of view." And so I did. I went to a community college. I got good enough grades. I knew someone who worked in a university in another state, and they helped me get into that university. And I graduated with a degree in health and fitness, and I was a personal trainer and all that. And I realized like this isn't enough. Working with bodies isn't enough. I want to help with like the body, mind, and soul, so to speak. And I'll never forget. I remember I was in my early 20s, and I'm like, I want to make a difference. And I don't know how and what that's going to be. And so then I just decided to go to chiropractic school, and I chose a particular school that had a very strong philosophy because different schools have different philosophies. Some are more academically inclined, and the other ones are more like energetic and philosophical, which that spoke to me more because it was really about the innate intelligence. It was about recognizing the power within the body heals the body and activating that intelligence and freeing up the interference. And so it was during those years, my chiropractic years, when I started reading books like The Celestine Prophecy or The Power of Now or Conversations with God. And I was like, wow, this is like really, really fascinating. And so then I went on to become a chiropractor and I opened up a business. And I still struggled though, because I realized that not everyone was interested in the kind of healing that I was interested in. People were like, hey, I have neck pain, I have back pain, just fix my neck and back pain. And I'm like, but don't you understand? Your neck and back pain is caused by your unhappiness with your career or the abuse you had when you were a child that you haven't gotten over. So I was always seeking different modalities. I studied metaphysics. I had a guru from India, Jaggi Vasudev, actually from the Isha Yoga Foundation. He was my guru for a couple of years. And that's where the bird calls, I did his practices, and I met the children's mother, and I knew she was diagnosed with bipolar at a very young age, but I still um, choose to go into the relationship because she was so brilliant, and she was one of the first like women that I could have deep conversations with, and she wouldn't look at me like I was weird, and she was also beautiful and just intelligent, and we could just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and it was wonderful. And I felt like the journey that I was on, that if she can like stay on this journey, we can keep her sane and stable, right? And we would, and we did. We both together, we did metaphysics, and then we actually worked with the practices of the Isha Yoga Foundation, and then we had to deal with her bipolar episodes, which was something that I was not prepared for. Um, Now, knowing what I know now about mental illness as an access conscious facilitator, I have a lot more information about some of the things that she was going through, which that's a whole nother conversation for another call. But at that time, I'm like, what's going on? I mean, modern medicine wasn't working, the lithium, the mood stabilizers, the metaphysics, they kept her stable for 3.5 years. We had another baby boy. We had two boys at the time, and it was like she was possessed, right? And so in this reality, they'll say, well, that's just the nature of the illness. So it can go dormant, and then it just comes back, and it could be because it's different stresses. And at the time, we had a lot of stress. We had financial stress. I was like the starving artist, but I was like the starving healer, right? I took great pride in being poor because that made me a good healer because I wasn't in it for the money. And so then after a while, I'm like, you know what? This sucks. You know what I mean? It sucks not having money. Fuck that. Why can't I be a rich, great healer, right? And I'll never forget. I went back to our guru, and I'm like, we're doing all your practices. Why is she going insane? And he just said a lot of things that I felt like a guru shouldn't say. Because I'm like, does she have demons? Are there dark energies? What do we do? And it was like, he basically said that he was surprised that she was actually living a normal life to begin with. So basically, he was saying, yep, I always knew she was screwed up. It's even a miracle that she's still alive, and go back to doing the practices. And I was like, what the F is that? So I was like, screw this, because I thought all these practices are supposed to balance your energies. And she went insane. And so then we became Christian, non denominational, and we did that for 5.5 years. And she finally got stable again with no medicine. And she was sane, stable, and sober for 5.5 years. And then the illness started coming back out of nowhere because we were finally making money. Not a lot, but we had no more debt. We were happy. We had another baby girl at this point. So we had 3 children. And it was just one of those things that just it came out of nowhere. And I remember the medical doctors were like, something had to trigger it. And I'm like, I swear to you, nothing triggered it. Our relationship was better than it had ever been. We have no debt. Um, you know, the only thing I was frustrated about is I was still like, I was making a mediocre living financially. So I felt like my abilities as a healer wasn't matching my income, and I felt like I was practicing in an area that didn't really appreciate me and the talents that I had. And so again, make a long story short, she started getting sick again. And we did all the prayers, we did all our things you're supposed to do as a Christian, and the church kind of turned against me because as a chiropractor I studied a lot of different energetic modalities, and they're like, you just opened up the door to the devil, that's why she got sick again. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I'm doing kinesiology and all this stuff. It's like, this is how God made the body. What do you mean? And so she decided to leave. She her point of view was that she didn't want to she didn't want the children to grow up this way. And so when she decided to take her life, the kids were 10, 8, and 2.5. And so when she left, I was literally on my knees, and I'm like, God, I don't understand. For a family that has done everything from different angles to seek your face and to actually have more consciousness, this is what I have to show for it. Nobody else is trying as hard as we are to be one with the earth, to have communion, to seek your face from different points of view. And this is what we have to show for it. And so I had this awareness. I'm like, for someone, aside from the tragedy, I was like, okay, what if I didn't have the tragedy? Am I actually happy with my life? And outside of being a father, I was miserable. The only thing that I loved was just the fact that I was a father. I loved, and I always wanted to be the father that I never had. And I was, and I have been. And that's been one of my greatest joys of my life, is to be a father and raising kids. If it was, I'd have 100 kids if I could. I really would. That's the kind of person that I am. I love children. Maybe not when they become teenagers, but when they're little, I adore them. Anyway, so I remember saying, if I didn't have this tragedy, am I happy with my life? And I'm like, I'm like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, for someone who is like, psychiatrists loved me because I was always an open book. They never had to like try to dig up to find what was going on in my subconscious mind. I was always like, here's all my stuff, help me. Right? And it never helped me because it was just me talking a lot like I'm doing now, that they never got to the core of anything. And so I'm like, here's my core, please help me.
Did you have
And
any knowing that time, Anthony? Like, I mean, if you go back now, like when you're talking, did you have a knowing then?
totally.
Hmm.
Well, the knowing was that wherever I'm stuck, I had a lot of knowings. Knowing what I know now, I had a ton of knowings that I didn't acknowledge. But one of them was that wherever it is that I'm stuck, it's not cognitive, it's not of the conscious mind, and it's not even of the subconscious mind. It's something that's energetic, and that you can't get there intellectually. You can't get that through talk therapy. So I literally I remember calling out to God. I'm like, God, I'm going outside the box again. And if I go to hell for it, fine, I'll have a lot of friends there with me, because I did what you were supposed to do, and I have nothing to show for it. And then all of a sudden, I get this email, as I do, about all these different healing modalities, and I learned about this thing called access consciousness, the bars, and it talked about how it gets to those places that are beyond your cognitive understanding in the subconscious mind. And I was like, this seems interesting, especially because it was a hands-on modality, right? And so I put the kids in the car and we drove about 4.5 hours and we went to our first bars class. And I definitely resisted it at first. And really what kept me going back was I saw the ease that it created for the children. Because at that point, I was like, I think I'm a lost cause because I've done everything. But I'll keep coming back for the kids because I see the ease it creates for them and the joy. And then it was my third bars class where I swear I thought I was going to get sick and vomit. And then the very next day, I felt like someone had opened up my cranium, took out my old brain, threw it away, put a brand new brain in there, closed my head up, and I woke up the next morning. I felt like I had a brand new brain. It was
Wow.
only 11 months after their mother died, and I had all this joy in my world. And I was like, okay, there's something to this work because I've never felt that with anything, any modality I'd ever done in my life. And I said, I need to pursue this. And then, so here I am 9 years later.
So had it been done access then with you, what was the cause of getting back? Was it like her choice? Was it like something else?
You mean with the kid's mom?
Yeah.
Well, I think she lost hope because at that point, her point of view is we've tried every modality. We've had a guru. Before the guru, we did metaphysics. And then we even thought, which it usually goes reverse. Usually people start off in the church in this part of the world, and then they start to seek all these other things. We were the opposite. We were like, screw church. And we were like, metaphysics, that didn't help. Guru, that didn't help. And then we found a very unique type of church that, they had prophets that came in. It was different than like Catholicism or your Orthodox type churches. And so it was actually quite fun for 5.5 years because they were really open to lots of different things energetically. Um, but when she got sick again, I think she had lost hope. And her point of view is, I don't want the kids to see me this way. And so she's like, I'm leaving. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, look, you've been okay for 5.5 years, and it usually takes you about a year to get stable again. So I'm like, you're almost through this. I'll deal with one bad year for 5.5 more good ones. Because if you try to kill yourself, because she said she saw a demon. That's why she was trying to kill herself. And she said the demon was inside of her. I said, well, if you kill the demon, you realize that you go too. Okay. And so I said, please don't do that because, we the last 5 years have been phenomenal. And, let's just not, let's don't give up is what I said. And then about a week later is when she decided to leave. And it was devastating, and you can get me going talking long enough about it now. It just still brings up stuff. And,
Uh,
but
yeah, sorry. I think I'll cut that short too for you. So it's like, so how does bringing from there to access journey, and you're going to access, and what you just said very beautifully, that there is some certain things that you cannot, which is beyond metaphysics, which is beyond like cognitive, because that's where we struggle the most. Cognitive, because we do not have the cognitive awareness, and still we know there is something possible, or there's
yeah,
an energy that we are fighting constantly. Can you
yeah,
talk more about that and how to?
yeah. Well, again, so here I am, I'm on my knees and I'm like, what happened this time? Like, what happened? We weren't stressed out. Like, there were no triggers, right? And I remember the medical doctors are like, something must have happened. I'm like, I swear to you, nothing happened. And it literally felt like it came out of nowhere. And it wasn't really until, as I'm taking these access consciousness classes, in the beginning, they were more about just my getting me past my grieving and my pain and suffering and struggling financially. And then I started to get all these awarenesses about how aware and psychic she was. And so when you struggle, a lot of times when people struggle with mental illness like bipolar disorder borderline personality disorder and schizophrenia, that they are actually super, super, super sensitive to different energies around them, and not just the like of the physical world, but of the non-physical world too. Now this isn't, now we're getting into like information that doesn't really quite fit any box in this reality, right? So it's like, so I was willing to actually look at that and listen. And then and as I started taking more classes and access, the talk to the entities classes, I started to be like, oh my God, that's what she was aware of. But she felt so alone in that awareness, it started to make her feel crazy because she had nowhere to go and talk about these awarenesses. So then she, because it didn't fit this reality, it started to make her go more insane. It created a lot of fight or flight in her universe, right? And to the point where she couldn't sleep anymore, to the point where she became psychotic and almost catatonic. It was like she saw ghosts. That's how it was when you would look at her. And she did, knowing what I know now, she was tapped into these different universes and all that stuff. And so, but because there's not a lot of, you don't go to school to learn this stuff. There's no conversations about this stuff. So someone who has these capacities, they feel very, very alone in this world. So I always knew in the background that there was a reason, right? There's information that I'm still missing. And I remember back then, I cried out, God, please, you got to show me, because we have done the best that we could. There's got to be something else. And so then when Access came along, it was like, oh my God, that. Then, oh my God, that. Oh my God, this. And about 2.5 years into Access, then I realized that these tools are way more than just getting you through your pain and suffering, but this actual, like, this work helps you to access your capacities, your unique abilities and energies. And I'll never forget when I spoke to Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness. He's like, we could have saved her life. These tools could have saved her life. And there's no doubt in my mind, if people, and this is the key, if people are willing to use the tools,
Right.
if they're willing to use the tools, it can change the face of mental illness on the planet. And
And it's,
it doesn't fit.
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know I'm talking a lot, but
Yeah.
it doesn't fit anything that you would learn in university. Doesn't fit anything you would learn in any kind of spiritual practice, whether it's an Eastern or Western. It's its own unique set of tools that are designed to empower people to know what they know without judgment. So,
Yeah. So I asked this question last time also on the talk show, that there are a lot of people, because I've been looking around the people who are into depression, like my husband was, and a lot of other people I've seen into deep depressions. And that is when they do not, even if everything is lying in front of them, they've done the classes with access and stuff, they still do not choose to come out of that depression. And they like, nothing seems, it's like even anybody wants to pull, they don't want to be pulled. What is
yeah.
that, Anthony? If you can talk about that anxiety and the depression that nobody wants to choose.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Just like, because you and I would be like, hey, come on, you have these things available. It's like someone who's hungry, right? And you're like, here's food, and they still choose not to eat.
Correct.
And it's like, for you and I, that doesn't make any sense, right? And that's the $1 billion question, or the $1 trillion question, is like, why don't people choose, or at least try things that can help pull them out of it? And at the end, it really comes down to choice. And we may never know what goes on in someone else's world inside their head, right? We don't know the things that they're aware of. And I'll tell you, if I had to say one, what my point of view is about why certain people don't make certain choices to reach for help, I'll say one word: vulnerability. People everywhere globally have a very, very, very difficult time in lowering their barriers and being vulnerable enough to reach for help, because in order to be more conscious, in order to pull yourself out of, let's say, the gutter, requires a major level of vulnerability where you may have to look at the dark parts of yourself or the parts that you've judged as being dark. And that's not always comfortable, right? So people have this point of view that if they actually look at these dark parts of themselves, that it may make them worse. They may go further into the depression, or they may even die. So what they do is they put up those walls and barriers, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to go there. So I would have to say, if I had to pick one thing, it's just vulnerability, and that's the key. And
So,
if
what
you
would
can
you
do it,
suggest for the people who are around them? What would you suggest for them? Family who's around them, such people who are depressed, friends, just be or with
it's
non-judgment.
it's a great question. It's hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can get to a different network here. Oh no, I'm good. Um, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but if we can stop trying to fix them, that will create more space for them to choose. So
Mm.
we need to actually learn how to be the space for them to choose, but also be the space for them to choose to die if that's what ultimately they want. Because the more that we try to fix them, the more walls and barriers go up in their reality. And so at the end of the day, it's their choice, it's their life. And all I know is that the more I've ever tried to fix anybody, the more the more separation I would create between me and them.
Wow, that's
And
a
that's not easy, especially if you're dealing with children, your children. Um, because we have points of view about death, like death somehow is a wrongness. And what if for some people, death is a reset? Now, we do know that if you do choose to die, you take yourself even with you. So if you got your struggles here, even when you cross over into the spirit world, you're still going to take your struggles with you. So why not try to get it together now? Right. But for us, I think we need to be a greater energy. We need to be more of a light, but not through words, by through us being greater and space for these people, which isn't easy. It's not easy. I will say that, especially when you're dealing with your kids or your lovers or whoever.
wow. Thank you. That's amazing. And now coming to your body work, because you have this magical capacity which you have been talking, something that we cannot unlock cognitively at times, but you have this capacity of unlocking a lot of stuff in a lot of people. I have been one of them. So I've always been deeply, deeply grateful to you for this, unlocking so many capacities in me. So would you talk more about it? What is that capacity and how do you do that? And what is it all about?
Yeah, thank you. Well, what we call it is, Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, and Dr. Dane here, the co-creator of Access Consciousness. Dr. Dane created this beautiful energetic work called Energetic Synthesis of Being, ESB, and then he teaches the this energy work in the Symphony of Possibilities classes, SOP. And so they affectionately call the sessions that I do ASB, for Anthony Synthesis of Being. And so, and you're trying to describe really something that's undescribable energetically, but what it really is it's gosh, it's an invitation to this energetic world where you actually begin to, it's like your limitations begin to dissolve and you start to access more of you. Okay, you start to have more communion with your body, you start to have more communion with the earth, you start to, it's like the abuses that maybe you have experienced throughout your life, you start to go beyond those abuses and you start to recognize really how insignificant the things that you have decided were problems are, because you start to tap into this energy that's really, there is nothing that matches that energy in this reality. Maybe when you go out into nature, okay, and maybe when you're actually tapped into our beautiful planet that likes to thrive and be alive. And so it really is in this invitation, you start to access this whole other world. And when the sessions are done, and they show up differently every time, It's like for some people, it's like the bodies are turned on for the first time in many, many years. And I don't mean like sexual turn on. I'm talking like your molecules are buzzing like everywhere, you know. And sometimes people will cry in a session, but the crying is more like a release of maybe all their grief, a release of all the abuses they've had. And so it really is just this, it's an invitation to invite people to have more of them and to go beyond whatever they decided were limitations that really aren't the limitations that they thought they were. So it's just a way for people to have more of them. And it's just such a gift.
So is it that everybody has it or only
Yes.
some,
Everybody.
but it's only who taps into it?
Well, it's not even about tapping into, it's like, in not to, it's like no pun intended, but it's like access consciousness, right? So we are accessing more of our own consciousness. So it's already there. We just have to like sort of open the door and access it so we have the awareness of it. And so and now we're coming into like where you start to perceive, know, be, and then the biggest thing is receive, which in the receiving thing is another component as to why a lot of people don't choose to heal, is because their level of receiving, they just have a hard time receiving.
So can you talk more about receiving? Because people generally, people who are not from the access background, they don't get what receiving, what do we mean by receiving? So can you talk
Yeah.
more about it?
Yeah, a lot of times people like when they think of receiving, they think, oh, more money, more lovers, or a better relationship, a nicer house, a nicer car. Yes, those things could happen and show up, but that's more of a byproduct for you increasing your energetic receiving. It's like more about like allowing, instead of like allowing like a 10-watt light bulb of energy into your universe, you're actually starting to allow a tsunami of energy come in to you and actually allow it to permeate every single cell and molecule in your body. So it's almost like it's an energetic receiving. And that's what all the tools do. That's what the bars creates. That's what the ASB creates, the SOP, the ESB. When we do the verbal facilitation and vulnerability, when you lower your barriers, when you're willing to look at not only the good, but the bad parts of you, the ugly parts of you, without judgment, without a point of view, you can receive so much more. And in this receiving, you literally have access to every energetic thing that's available to you, both in the seen physical world and the non physical world. And when you have access to everything, by living in and as the question, you can create and have anything show up in your life that you desire. It literally is like waving the magic wand, but it's like learning how to use these tools. So to me, receiving is receiving everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly of yourself with no point of view, the good and the bad and the ugly of our people without a point of view. Because then that creates total receiving, which creates total access to everything so you can create the life you'd like to have.
Wow. So what all has shifted and changed in your life, Anthony, from that to now?
Oh, God. I'm not insecure like I used to be. Like there's a level of knowing that I function from that I never had available to me before. It's like, so there may be people listening, they may be like, this guy's crazy. He's a quack, It's like this, you can't prove anything that you're saying. There's nothing in the science world that, justifies what you're saying. And you know what? Call me a quack. Throw me in jail. I don't care because I know. I know. Now, I may not be able to, there may not be anything tangible, but there's a knowing in which I function from now that I didn't function from before. And no matter what you do to me, you can't take that away from me ever again. And so, does it mean that I still don't have bad days? No, I have bad days, but most of those bad days aren't even my issues. They're just my awareness of what other people are going through,
Uh,
So I would say my confidence, my self-esteem, my money flows have changed. My ability to receive money I don't, it's like crazy. It's like I used to give my services away for free, thinking that somehow that was going to increase my business. It never did. And now I charge so much money for sessions that it's almost insane, right? According to this reality, and people pay it. It's weird. It's like, what the hell happened? It's like, oh my God. So it's everything's changing, and just, I have less pain in my body and I'm older. That's not supposed to happen.
But as I said before we started, you started looking more younger. Like, I don't think you're older. For me, I've seen you growing like over the years, and it's like, wow. Every time I look at your pictures, wow, it's a reverse aging happening.
Yeah.
It's wonder what it is. But yeah, I'm sure this is the joy and the happiness of being yourself. And
Yes.
yes. So yeah.
Oh, and like you become even more sensitive to the world around you. It's like I've become a gardener, and I still don't know anything about like I can't tell you the names of plants or anything like that, but it's like I could create a beautiful haven in my backyard of plants and trees and in flowers. It's because I've developed this sensitivity to where when I walk into a nursery garden, it's like the plants and trees are like, take me home, take me home, take me home. And we, have managed to build this beautiful oasis in my backyard. And it's like, and these are the types of things that have sort of changed and developed as I use the tools of access consciousness. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just a gift. That it's like creating heaven on earth, so to speak, and not making yourself wrong anymore. Like that's the key too. It's like I don't beat myself up like I used to. I
So
still
how
have my days. Don't get me wrong, but they don't last for months and months and months.
they last forever. I think these changes are these are not like a weekly change or a 10 days change. These changes are like what I have received in my life. They're forever. They're
Forever.
yeah, forever.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about pain as you're a body class facilitator? Because the pain is a big thing in this reality. Everybody's pains, aches, sufferings in the body. So could you
Yeah.
put a word around that from your end?
Well, gosh. So in Access, we talk about a few things with regards to pain, and one of the things we talk about is, what if pain was a potency you have that you're not willing to acknowledge or you haven't acknowledged, right? Because your capacities, your potencies, your abilities, they're energy. But when we're not expressing them, when we're not acknowledging them, where does that energy go? Energy doesn't just disappear, right? It's always changing though. So when you're not expressing these potencies, when you're not acknowledging these potencies that you have, when you're not acknowledging the gift that you are, this pain gets like, I'm sorry, these capacities get stored and locked in different places in your body, and they start to actually wreak havoc. So one of the things that we learn Access is start to acknowledge the gift that you are in the world, right? And it may be hard because in the beginning, maybe all you see is the abuse you've been through, all the yelling, when your parents yelled at you and told you you were stupid or you weren't smart enough, or your teachers or whoever, or you're not good enough, or you're too ugly, you're too short, you're too fat. Like that's the noise that we hear in our heads all the time, right? And what starts to happen is that noise starts to quiet down and you start to access these energies. And you're like, oh my God, you mean that's what's available to me? That's who I be. And so as you start to access these energies and your potencies and capacities and acknowledge them, a lot of these pains that you struggle with start to release and dissipate. Um, Pain's also an awareness. Yeah, we learn also in Access that 99% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't belong to you. Now, that was a very hard concept for me to wrap my head around. Okay, I'm like, oh, come on, I'm the one who's feeling it. It's like, I'm feeling this pinch on my skin. It must belong to me, but I was like, what if I at least ask the question, like we learned, like, who does it belong to? And what if I did explore the fact that maybe it doesn't belong to me? Like, is that going to hurt me to at least say hey, it belongs to someone else? And then we use certain tools to change that. Or what if it belongs to something else? And you and I have both learned that a lot of times that could be the earth asking for an energetic contribution. So these things that we're aware of that we're not acknowledging show up as symptoms, right? That we're like, oh, it's my neck pain or it's my stomach problem or whatever. And if we start to use the tools and be like, okay, we work with the earth. We work with maybe someone else's. We work with even maybe our awarenesses of what's going on in the spirit world and we start using those tools. All of a sudden, these pains, whether it's emotional or physical, go away. I'm like, oh my God. And I know that part sounds hokey to maybe a new listener. And I get it. I had that same point of view, especially people who maybe come from medical backgrounds. It's like, but it must be yours because the lab tests reveal that it's yours. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, cool. But what if there was something else that was possible? And what if actually, when you shine the light of awareness on it, you could actually change the energetics of it? Because even disease is energetic. Viruses are energetic. Bacterias are energetic. I mean, hell, we're made up of bacteria, for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean? So it's like, so we started looking at pain in the body from a different point of view. And we have tools, verbal tools, to create an awareness and a knowing to dissipate those intensities in your body. And then we have these beautiful body processes that there's like over 60 of them, that are designed to get you to look at the things in your life that are not working, but to also to create ease in your body and to increase your level of receiving. And those things alone start to change pain in our bodies.
Yeah. So it's like funny. A lot of time people say, "Oh, what is this? Just keeping your hand, and you're just calling for this. Why would they go up? And why how?" So can you talk about the 3 day body class? Like, what is it like all about?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just that's a whole 3 days of gifting and receiving. It's like, you get a manual and, you have these massage tables that are all laid out and you take turns giving the body process, you take turns receiving the body process. And each time is about an hour long, each trade, but what we do is we start to explore the who does this belong to question, right? We start to explore, um, like what happens during the body class a lot is sometimes some people just go to sleep and it's just a weekend filled of just ease and rest. That's the worst thing, right? That happens, which is wonderful, right? And then on an extreme level, some people will cry during a session, and it's like all that sadness and grief is releasing from their body. Some people's bodies get turned on for the first time. It's like, oh my God, I have all this energy. What's going on? Sometimes during the body class, um, it's like all of a sudden you start to look at like these things that like have been a problem for you, right? But it's like finally like coming out, like for you to look at so you can finally change it. So it sort of like starts to expose the insanities around your problems, right? And so as a facilitator, and if someone raises their hand and asks a question, the facilitator will guide you through who does this belong to? Is it yours? And we do some verbal clearing if it's necessary and appropriate. But really, at the end of the day, the body processes are about receiving more and accessing your unique capacities, your unique energies that are only yours because we're all so unique. We all have our own energetic blueprint. And like, what if we can actually function from that space as best we possibly can without ever holding back ever again?
You mean to say there's a magic available with these body
For
uh,
everyone.
processes? Like,
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely.
And is any body class coming in? Are you coming to India or in the world? Can you let us know about your classes, which are
Yeah. Well, with all the restrictions with the whole COVID thing, you know what I mean? But things are starting to loosen up. So one of the first places I'll be coming back to will be India.
yay?
Uh, I love you guys, and it's so much fun every time we do a class there. But right now I'm going to Santa Cruz, California next weekend, and so we'll be doing that, and I'll be going to Brazil to do a body class in May. So we're just sort of waiting for these restrictions to sort of change, and so we can travel a little more freely and get back to that. So yeah, but if people are interested in seeing where I am in the world, or maybe even doing a session, they could go to my website at www.dranthonymattis.com and they can learn
I'll
more
pin
about
the link. I'll pin the link, guys, on the chat. And
it.
also, last not the least, just wanted to know you've done so many modalities, you've done access, you've done. uh, a lot of stuff to be the conscious one you truly be. My question to you is, what is your knowing of life, Anthony? Not from coming from access, not coming from any modality, but what is your knowing of life and living?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to me is like when you like the whole purpose of why you've created this whole talk show is, never give up, never give in, never quit. And so it's like no matter what and this is always my point of view before they even came to Access, it's like there is something more. There is something greater than maybe what's showing up in your life right now. And so don't give up. Really, don't ever give up, never give in, and never quit, because there's always someone there that will help you and guide you. There's a modality out there for someone, okay? There's something out there for you to help you access more of you, and just don't stop trying to find what that is for you. And at the end of the day, really be you. What would be fun for you? Have fun in life. What brings you joy? Okay, because you only get, like, as far as like you with your being with this body,
Yeah.
you get one go around with this body. Okay, you may come back again and again and again in different bodies, right? But as far as like this particular body, you get one go around. Have fun, enjoy your body, enjoy the finer things in life because they contribute to you in your body. Don't hold back. Go for it. Just go for it with that, whatever that is for you.
So,
Go
can you
for
give us one tool for having that courage to be the change that we truly are? One tool that is your favorite to get that courage to, when you're depressed from the world, you're depressed from everything around you in your.
The one tool is like no matter what's showing up in your life, like what else is possible? What else is possible that I don't even know exists? What else is possible? Keep asking that question. And I'm gonna give you asked me for one tool, I'm gonna give you another one. I gotta sneak that in there. But the other tool that helped me when I was really, really depressed was live your life in 10-second increments.
Wow.
Like if you had 10 seconds to live the rest of your life, what would you choose? And what that does is it gets you out of your past and it gets you out of worrying about your future. It gets you in the now. What choice would you like to make right now if you only had 10 seconds? Because that choice is going to create your future. And that was huge for me. So, what else was possible? And if I had 10 seconds to live the rest of my life, what would I choose? And that gets you out of that like mental masturbation, trying to figure things out and all of that stuff. And so sorry, I gave you two.
I'm
I
happy.
cheat.
And I'm gonna ask, I'm getting a little greedier. So, is it possible that whosoever is watching it now or in future for us to have a 1 or 2 minute of your ASP contribution to.
Yeah, sure. So whoever's watching, yeah, that's hopefully you're not driving a car or something like that. But maybe, yeah. So just sit down or lay down. And here's the thing about the ASB, ESB, SOP universe. It's not a doing. And it's like even in our conversation, like the energies are already moving,
I do.
right? So for those of you who are listening, and if you felt like excited, or even if you felt maybe like an anger come up, is that actually anger, or is that potency that you've misidentified and misapplied as anger? Because you haven't been expressing it, it shows up as anger. So yeah, so what if the energies have been moving already? There, cool, just like that. Cool, and actually push your barriers down. And would you be willing to allow the quantum entanglements of the elementals to contribute to you? And don't worry about what that is. There, cool.
Wow.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity, Anthony. It's always lovely to talk to you. I can never have enough of you, but thank you. Thank you so much. Anything else you would like to say before you leave?
I'm so grateful to be here. You're beautiful as always, and I love seeing how much you've changed and what you're choosing to be in the world. I mean, your whole energy has shifted and changed so much. So you keep choosing.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Bye.
Thank you everyone who was here, and thank you my team, Sonali, Shivangi, and Umesh. Won't have been possible without you all. And thank you everyone. See you next Sunday. Keep it tuned and see you tomorrow at 11:11 on Insta Live.